The shuttle shuddered through the metal graveyard like a drunk stumbling home. Captain Jax virally leaned back in his seat, feet propped up on the console, watching the view outside the cockpit window. "Ah, another day, another pile of cosmic junk," he muttered, lighting up a cigar that smelled like burnt rubber. "Don't you ever get tired of the smell of failure?" quipped Helix, his pilot, with a grin that suggested he knew exactly where the nearest escape pod was. Helix had a face like a potato that had seen better days, but his hands were magic with the controls. "Failure's the only thing that keeps me warm at night," Jax replied, blowing smoke rings like he was trying to imitate a pretentious dragon. The scrapyard stretched out before them, a twisted, floating wasteland of derelict ships and forgotten tech, each hulk a testament to the folly of civilizations that had chased glory and found only the void. Jax squinted at the nearest wreck, a rusted cruiser with more holes than a politician's promises. "Home, sweet home," he said, tapping ash onto the console. Helix guided them down to a relatively flat piece of debris, the shuttle landing with all the grace of a brick in a tumble dryer. "Welcome to paradise," Helix announced, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Let's get this over with," Jax said, grabbing his toolkit. He slapped the emergency release, and the shuttle's hatch hissed open, the stale smell of space and old metal greeting them like an old friend's bad cologne. Waiting for them outside was Zara, the tech genius with a penchant for sarcasm and a hairstyle that looked like a failed science experiment. She was knee-deep in a mess of wires, a frown etched into her face as she poked at a piece of equipment with a screwdriver that was definitely older than she was. "Find anything useful?" Jax asked, swaggering over. Zara looked up, eyes rolling like a gambler's dice. "Only if you're into pre-galactic rust and disappointment, my favorite," Jax replied. "Think there's any chance we'll find something that doesn't belong in a museum of terrible ideas?" Zara straightened, wiping her hands on her jumpsuit. "Unlikely, but I've been wrong before. Remember when I said Helix couldn't land this heap without crashing?" She gestured broadly at the shuttle. Helix chuckled, joining them. "Lies. All lies. I land like a butterfly with sore feet." Jax shook his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Let's get this show on the road. The sooner we find these rare materials, the sooner we can get back to actual civilization." The trio set off into the scrapyard, navigating the precarious labyrinth of twisted metal and forgotten dreams. Jax kept his eyes peeled for anything that glimmered in the dull light, any sign of the precious materials that would make this trip worthwhile. "You ever wonder," Helix started, stepping over a mangled wing, "how many poor souls are floating around here, thinking they were going to make history?" "I try not to," Jax replied. "It's like thinking about all the people who put pineapple on pizza. Just ruins your faith in humanity," Zara snorted. "That's why I stick to facts and figures, less disappointing." They continued their search, picking through the wrecks like crows at a feast. Jax found himself staring at a piece of ancient tech, a console that looked like it could barely hold a charge, let alone power a ship. "Think this thing still works?" he asked, giving it a hopeful kick. It sparked to life, lights flickering like a dying star. Zara peered over his shoulder. "I'll be damned. It's uglier than Helix's mother, but it might actually have some juice left." Helix frowned. "Leave my mother out of this. She's a saint." "A saint that raised a sinner," Jax muttered, fiddling with the console. He pressed a few buttons, and the machine groaned to life, screens buzzing with static before settling on a grainy image. "Well, that's new," Zara said, leaning in to get a better look. The screen displayed a map of the scrapyard, highlighting a section far from their current location. "Looks like a jackpot," Jax said, eyes gleaming with the sort of excitement that only promised more trouble. "Or a trap. Only one way to find out," Helix said, already heading in the direction the map indicated. They picked their way through the debris, each step resonating with the sound of crumpling history. Jax felt a familiar thrill in his veins, the kind that usually preceded either a big score or a bigger screw-up. Arriving at the marked location, they found something unexpected. A massive piece of machinery half buried under a pile of scrap, its surface covered in etchings that glowed with an eerie light. "What the hell is that?" Zara breathed, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Jax approached it cautiously, running his hand along the smooth metal. "If I had to guess, I'd say it's worth more than my last divorce settlement." Helix whistled. "That's not saying much, Cap. This is ancient war tech," Zara said, kneeling down to examine the glowing runes. "From the days when planets thought fighting over who had the biggest laser was a good idea." Jax chuckled darkly. "Sometimes I think we're still in those days. Just with fewer lasers." "Well, let's see what secrets this old beast is hiding," Zara said, pulling out her tools, the spark of discovery shining bright even in the grimdark setting. As she worked, Helix kept watch, eyes scanning the wreckage for any sign of trouble. "You think anyone else knows about this?" he asked, a note of concern in his voice. "If they do, they are either dead or really bad at finding things," Jax replied, the humor in his voice not entirely masking the edge of anxiety. Minutes stretched into the kind of hours that weigh heavy. Zara's hands moved with precision, each click and hum of the machine echoing in the desolate scrapyard. "Got it," she finally announced, stepping back as the machinery thrummed to life, the glow intensifying until it seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "That's either really good or really bad," Helix said, taking a cautious step back. Jax grinned. "Ain't no fun without a little risk." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them trembled, and the machine let out a noise that could generously be described as a death rattle. "Oh, fantastic," Zara deadpanned, bracing herself against the shaking. "Because our lives weren't exciting enough." A hatch opened on the side of the machine, belching out a cloud of vapor and revealing a chamber filled with gleaming crystals and strange artifacts. "Looks like we hit the mother lode," Jax said, eyes wide as he stepped forward, greed and curiosity warring within him. "Or opened a portal to hell," Helix muttered, squinting at the artifacts with suspicion. Zara picked up one of the crystals, turning it over in her hands. "These are power sources, better than anything we've ever seen. And they're worth more than a planet's GDP," Jax added, already calculating the potential profit. "We could retire on this." Helix snorted. "Retirement's for people who don't know how to have fun," says the man with a death wish, Zara retorted, but her eyes were sparkling, the thrill of discovery making even the grim surroundings seem a little brighter. "Let's get this loaded up," Jax said, feeling the weight of their find settle on his shoulders. "Before some other scavenger decides to crash our party." As they began to gather their spoils, a distant rumble echoed through the scrapyard, a reminder that even the universe's forgotten corners weren't as abandoned as they seemed. "Sounds like we're not alone," Helix said, his tone light but his eyes serious. Jax nodded, his mind already racing through a dozen contingencies. "Let's move fast. I have a feeling we're about to have company." With the tension hanging thick as asteroid dust, they loaded the shuttle, each crystal and artifact a step closer to either fortune or calamity. "Once in a lifetime, huh?" Zara said, her voice breathless with excitement and a hint of fear. Jax smiled a crooked grin, glancing back at the ancient war machine that had set their blood pounding. "Let's just hope we live to tell the tale." As they prepared to make their hasty exit, the ground shuddered again, a stark reminder that nothing in the universe came without a cost. The rumble of engines, distant but growing closer, promised that their adventure was far from over. "Buckle up, folks," Jax said, his tone caught between exhilaration and dread. "It's about to get interesting." The rumble turned into a roar as Jax, Helix, and Zara worked against the clock, moving with a mix of urgency and resignation that came from knowing they'd definitely stepped into something they weren't ready for. The ancient war machine they had awakened was not just part of a forgotten empire's arsenal. It was the arsenal. A dormant sentient planet weapon, just waiting for some idiot to poke it with a stick. And here they were, the royal court jesters of idiocy. "Any chance we can give it a sleeping pill and tiptoe away?" Helix asked, hands busy strapping down their newfound loot in the shuttle's hold. Sure, Zara replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. If you've got a giant bottle of Cosmic NY Quill. Jax lit another cigar, more out of habit than enjoyment. The smoke curled around his head like an old ghost, the kind that liked to remind you of all your bad decisions. We're gonna need more than a sedative. That thing's primed to throw a cosmic tantrum. The machine, now fully awakened, thrummed with a sinister energy, its glowing runes casting ghostly shadows across the scrapyard. It hummed like a hive of angry bees, each pulse echoing across the void, sending signals to who knows what or who knows where. Jax had a feeling they'd just rung the dinner bell for trouble. Why does it always have to be planet weapons? Zara muttered, tinkering with her handheld device trying to decipher the signal. Why can't it ever be a stash of space wine or a treasure trove of ancient porn? Helix snorted. If you find ancient porn, keep it to yourself. I've got standards, low as they might be. Focus, people, Jax snapped, though a slight grin tugged at his lips. We need to figure out what this thing is saying before we're up to our necks in sentient planet drama. The idea of sentient planets wasn't new. Galactic historians loved to spin tales of worlds that thought for themselves, entire ecosystems with a collective consciousness. Most folks thought it was the stuff of space madness, the kind of story you tell when you're 3 drinks in and the bar's about to close. But here it was, a relic from those supposedly mythical times, buzzing like it had a grudge against the universe. Zara twisted a dial, her eyes glued to the readout. Got it. The signal's broadcasting a call to arms. Looks like we're the idiots who woke up a weapon that thinks it's got a score to settle. Great, Jax said, rolling his eyes. We've gone from scavengers to unwitting conscripts in a war that's older than dirt. Just another Tuesday, Helix quipped, adjusting his flight goggles with a resigned sigh. As they loaded the last of the crystals and artifacts, the sky beyond the scrapyard shimmered ominously. Stars flickered in odd patterns, as if winking out their last goodbyes. Jax couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just kicked a hornet's nest the size of a solar system. We need to get the hell out of here, Zara urged, snapping her device shut. This place is about to become very popular, very fast. No sooner had she spoken than a shadow moved across the scrapyard. A massive shape, blacker than the void itself, loomed over them. It was a ship, ancient and deadly, its silhouette as familiar as the stories of doom it embodied. Looks like we've got company, Helix said, his voice a mix of dread and admiration. And not the fun kind. The newcomer was a dreadnought, a relic from the wars of sentient planets. Its hull was a testament to battles long forgotten, pocked and scarred, yet still imposing. As it glided closer, the air crackled with tension, the kind that promised either a swift retreat or a swift end. Think we can talk our way out of this? Jax asked, already knowing the answer. Sure, Zara replied, her voice dry. Right after you convince a black hole to take a day off. The dreadnought's comm systems crackled to life, a voice booming through the static. It was deep and resonant, the kind of voice that could make even the bravest of souls reconsider their career choices. You have awakened the Guardian. State your intentions or be obliterated. Jax cleared his throat, hoping his voice didn't betray the cocktail of fear and bravado swirling in his gut. Hi there. We were just passing through doing a little light salvaging. No harm intended. There was a pause and then the voice returned, cold and unwavering. You have trespassed on forbidden ground. The Guardian's awakening marks the return of the Great War. Prepare for annihilation or speak your allegiance. Helix glanced at Jax, eyebrows raised. Well, they sure know how to roll out the welcome mat. Zara shook her head, her expression one of exasperated disbelief. You know, I always thought if I was going to get wiped out by something, it'd be my own experiments, not some ancient battle cruiser with a grudge. Jax took a deep breath, tapping ash from his cigar onto the shuttle floor. Looks like we're in this now. Might as well see what cards we've been dealt. He hit the comm switch, ready to bluff his way through a situation that had "bad idea" written all over it. "Listen, we're not here to pick sides. We just stumbled upon the Guardian by accident. How about we help you out instead?" Another pause, longer this time, filled the air. The kind that made you wonder whether the next sound you'd hear would be your own funeral dirge. Finally, the voice spoke again, its tone slightly less doomsday-ish. "Your proposal is unexpected but not unwelcome. Prove your intentions by aiding us." The war must not reignite. Jax let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "All right, what do you need?" The dreadnought's silhouette seemed to shift as if considering its options. "There are others, darker sentients who seek to awaken their own weapons. Stop them and you will earn our trust." Helix rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "So basically, we're errand boys for ancient weapons now." "Just when I thought I'd found my place in the universe." Zara rolled her eyes. "Look at it this way, at least it's not dull." "Okay," Jax said, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a collapsing star. "We're in, but don't expect miracles. We're just a ragtag crew trying not to die." The voice on the comms softened ever so slightly, as if acknowledging the absurdity of the situation. "Very well. Your cooperation is appreciated. But remember, disobedience will not be tolerated." With that, the connection cut off, the dreadnought hovering silently above them like an avenging angel with boundary issues. Jax turned to his crew, trying to muster some semblance of leadership amidst the chaos. "Well, folks, looks like we're peacekeepers now. Let's wrap this up before we end up as space debris." Helix nodded, moving to the cockpit with a determined stride. "Time to see if this butterfly can fly again." Zara joined him, her fingers dancing over the controls as she prepped the shuttle for a rapid departure. "I always wanted to save the universe. I just imagined doing it with less chance of imminent doom." Jax chuckled, though it was more out of disbelief than humor. "Yeah, well, next time we'll save the universe from a cozy beach on Risa. For now, let's see if we can keep our heads attached to our necks." The shuttle lifted off with a shudder, the thrusters firing up with a sound that was more mechanical protest than smooth ascent. As they ascended, the scrapyard shrank beneath them, a graveyard of forgotten dreams and a reminder of the chaos they'd unleashed. "Think we'll ever get used to this?" Helix asked, steering them toward the coordinates the dreadnought had provided. "Probably not," Zara replied. "But if we did, it wouldn't be half as interesting." Jax sat back, watching the stars streak by as they picked up speed. The universe was a vast, indifferent place, full of ancient grudges and forgotten wars. But for now, they had a job to do, a chance to maybe, just maybe, prevent history from repeating itself in the most explosive way possible. "Here's to not getting blown up today," Jax said, raising an imaginary glass in a toast to the absurdity of it all. Helix and Zara joined in, their laughter mingling with the hum of the engines, a small defiance against the encroaching darkness. As they sped through the void, bound for the next chapter in their unwanted adventure, Jax couldn't help but smile. It was a terrible plan, a ridiculous mission, and a near-certain guarantee of disaster. But it was also life, in all its chaotic, unpredictable glory. And that, as far as he was concerned, was worth sticking around for. The scrapyard loomed like the galaxy's worst neighborhood, full of derelict ships, forgotten tech, and more feral drones than you'd find sensible. Jax, Helix, and Zara navigated through it with the kind of finesse that only came from years of making bad choices and somehow living to tell about it. Jax, his cigar trailing smoke like some kind of personal branding, surveyed the floating junk. It's like someone decided to store the universe's regrets in one place. Helix adjusted his flight goggles, the lenses reflecting a kaleidoscope of broken dreams. Regrets. More like someone went on a cosmic garage sale spree and forgot to take down the signs. Zara was busy fiddling with her handheld device, the thing blinking and beeping like it was having a midlife crisis. "We're not alone out here, boys. I'm picking up chatter on the comms. Sounds like someone's gearing up for a reunion and everyone's invited." "Great," Jax said, sarcasm thick as the smoke swirling around his head. Nothing like uninvited guests to liven up a scavenging trip. The comms crackled, and Helix's finger hovered over the mute button like a trigger-happy cowboy. "You'd think after waking up a planet weapon we'd get a break." "You'd think," Zara agreed, not looking up from her device. "But no, fate's got a twisted sense of humor." "Let's not hang around and find out how twisted," Jax said. "Helix, plot us a course out of this junk jungle. Zara, see if you can get any intel on those sentient planets. If they're gearing up for war, I'd like to know which side's got the better snacks." Helix grinned, his fingers dancing over the controls. "On it, Captain. Though I gotta say, if I were a sentient planet, I'd have better things to do than wage war, like throwing a party," Zara snorted. "Yeah, a party of one." Planets aren't exactly known for their social skills. As the shuttle wove through the scrapyard's maze, Jax kept an eye on the sensors. "We're like the galaxy's worst-kept secret. How long before someone notices we're not on the guest list?" "Depends," Zara replied. "Do sentient planets gossip?" "Only when they are bored," Helix chimed in, guiding them past a particularly spiky piece of debris. "But then who isn't?" The comms hissed again, breaking the banter like an unwelcome third wheel. A voice, mechanical and cold, filled the cabin. "Unidentified vessel, you are trespassing in restricted space. Surrender or be terminated." Jack sighed, taking a long drag from his cigar. "Always with the termination threats. When did diplomacy become such a dying art?" "Right around the time peace treaties became scarce as hen's teeth," Zara muttered, her fingers still working her device. "I think I've got something. The planets are communicating, a lot of traffic about movements, formations. It's like a cosmic chess game and we're the pawns." Helix whistled low. "Pawns don't usually end well in chess, you know." "Thanks for the pep talk, Helix," Jack said dryly. "Really boosts the morale." "So what's the plan?" Zara asked, her eyes darting between Jack's and the ever-scrolling readout. "Well," Jack said, considering their options, "we've got two choices. We can either try to sneak past like the galaxy's worst burglars, or we pretend we're supposed to be here and see if we can get a peek at the playbook. I'm not picky. I'm voting for not getting blasted into atoms," Helix said. "But hey, I'm open to suggestions." "Let's try the sneaky approach," Zara suggested. "Less chance of running into an anti-aircraft hello." "Fine by me," Jax agreed, though the odds weren't exactly in their favor. "Helix, take us under the radar. Zara, keep those ears open for anything that might clue us in on the planet's plans." The shuttle dipped, weaving between mountains of scrap metal and the carcasses of long-forgotten vessels. Every pass felt like threading a needle in a hurricane, the kind of thing that made you question your life choices. "Look at that," Helix mused, nodding toward a particularly large chunk of debris. "Bet that ship's got a story to tell. Probably ends in a bang," Zara said, not missing a beat. "And not the fun kind." "Focus, people," Jax reminded them, though a wry smile tugged at his lips. "We need to find a way to get a better look at what we're up against." The comms crackled again, another voice sliding through the static, a different tone, less threatening, more bored. "Unit 4 reporting, all clear, awaiting further instructions." "Sounds like someone's slacking on the job," Helix said, eyebrows raised. "Or they're just as thrilled to be here as we are," Zara added. "Either way, that's our ticket. If we can intercept their feed, we might get a leg up." "Do it," Jax said. "And let's hope we're better at hacking than we are at bluffing." Zara's fingers flew over the controls, each tap and swipe a gamble. "Got it. Feeding the visuals now." The screens flickered to life, displaying a patchwork of feeds from various drones and ships scattered across the scrapyard and beyond. Each one was a puzzle piece, a glimpse into the sentient planet's machinations. "That's a hell of a fleet," Helix said, eyes wide. "They've got enough firepower to take on a small star cluster. Or a really stubborn cockroach," Zara quipped, though the weight of their discovery pulled at the corners of her mouth. "Looks like they're positioning around key points. Defensive mostly, but that could change if someone gives the order. Which means we need to figure out who's holding the reins," Jack said. before they yanked them and were left hanging. As they watched, the various feeds showed the movements of ships, the glint of weapons, and the ominous shadows of the sentient planets shifting into place. It was a dance only they knew the steps to, a cosmic ballet with a decidedly deadly finale. "We're in over our heads," Jax admitted, though there was a spark of determination in his eyes. "But that's never stopped us before." "True," Helix agreed. "And we've got one thing they don't." "What's that?" Zara asked, curious despite herself. "We're unpredictable," Helix said with a grin. "And sometimes, unpredictability the best weapon you've got." The shuttle continued to weave through the scrapyard, evading detection by the skin of its teeth. Every movement was a calculated risk, every turn a chance for disaster. But somehow they managed to keep flying, dancing on the edge of oblivion. "So what's the next move?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "We keep gathering intel," Jax said. "Find out who's calling the shots and see if we can tip the scales in our favor. If we play this right, we might just walk away with more than our skins." Helix nodded, his eyes on the screen. "And if we play it wrong," Jax shrugged, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, "then we go out with a bang. But hey, at least it'll be a hell of a story." The universe was a vast, uncaring place, with more secrets than stars and more danger than anyone had a right to face. But as they flew through the scrapyard, their fate uncertain but their resolve unbroken, Jax and his crew knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. Because in a galaxy where ancient grudges and sentient weapons threatened to tear everything apart, sometimes the only thing you could rely on was the people willing to stand by your side. Even if those people were a cigar-smoking captain, a sarcastic tech whiz, and a pilot with a penchant for dark humor. "To not getting obliterated," Jax said, raising an imaginary toast once more. "To flying under the radar," Zara added, her smile wry but genuine. "And to unpredictability," Helix finished, steering them through the scrapyard's final gauntlet. As they sped into the unknown, the universe stretched out before them, a tapestry of possibility and peril. It was a mess, a chaos of epic proportions. But for Jax and his crew, it was also home. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The scrapyard loomed around the shuttle like a bad hangover, ugly, cluttered, and reeking of regret. Jax leaned back, puffing his cigar, his version of stress relief in a universe determined to squash him like a bug under a boot. Helix adjusted his flight goggles, scowling at the screen. Another planet just joined the party. "They're multiplying like debt collectors during tax season." Jax chuckled, smoke curling from his lips. "Maybe they're just here to see how many ways we can screw this up. Wouldn't be the first audience we've disappointed," Zara said from her post, her handheld device buzzing with far too much enthusiasm. "I've got a hunch these planets have a group chat, and we're about to be the main topic." "Lovely," Jax replied, rolling his eyes. "Nothing like being galaxy famous for all the wrong reasons." Helix steered the shuttle through a thread-the-needle maneuver, dodging a particularly nasty-looking drone swarm. "I thought we'd hit rock bottom when we woke up that planet weapon." "Turns out rock bottom's got a basement. I'd rather not find out what's in the basement, thanks," Zara said, her eyes never leaving the screen. "But I've rigged some of the scrapyard's junk to act as decoys. Should keep them guessing for a bit." Jax raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me you've got decoys in this mess, more like controlled chaos," Zara grinned. "Just enough to buy us some breathing room." "Breathing room sounds good," Jax said. "I'm not a fan of asphyxiation. Ruins the complexion." The shuttle shook as something exploded nearby. One of Zara's decoys, no doubt, sending a plume of debris spiraling into the void. It was a diversion worthy of a con artist's best scapegoat. "Nice work," Helix called, guiding them through the metallic graveyard. "But it's only a matter of time before they catch on." Jax nodded, contemplating their next move. "We need a bigger trick up our sleeve. Something that'll make those sentient planets too busy to notice we're not where we're supposed to be." Zara smirked. You mean other than the obvious get ourselves blown up plan? That's plan B, Jax retorted. Plan A involves us staying alive longer than a mayfly with a death wish, Helix snorted. We've done more with less. Remember that job on Korriban Roman 4? Hard to forget, Jax said, recalling the job that should have ended with them as stardust. We need to turn this scrapyard's junk into our personal amusement park. The kind where everything's rigged to explode. Sounds fun, Zara said, fingers tapping at hyperspeed on her device. I'll get the wreckage talking to each other. Stimulate some friendly fire. Friendly fire, Helix laughed. There's no such thing, but I'll take what I can get. The shuttle weaved through the scrapyard, a dance of metal and mischief. Jax glimpsed a derelict battleship, its hull scarred from battles long past. Just the kind of relic that might have a few tricks left in its battered shell. Helix, bring us closer to that hunk of junk. Let's see if it's got anything useful, Jax ordered, eyes narrowing in thought. Helix complied, maneuvering the shuttle with a surgeon's precision toward the ancient vessel. Looks like it's seen better days. Who hasn't? Jax muttered, clambering out of his seat. Zara, keep those decoys running. Helix, stay sharp. I'll see if this relic has any magic left. Jax floated over to the airlock, cigar clamped between his teeth as he suited up. Spacewalks were never his favorite pastime, too much like dangling from a cliff without a safety net. But necessity was a harsh taskmaster, and he preferred the prospect of finding treasure to becoming space debris. He stepped into the void, the emptiness greeting him with the kind of silence that only amplified his own doubts. The battleship loomed closer, its surface a tapestry of ruin and rust. Looks inviting, Jax said to no one in particular, engaging his mag boots to land on the hull. He made his way to an access hatch, giving it a hopeful yank. To his surprise, it yielded with a groan. Guess this ship's as tired of playing dead as I am, he remarked, slipping inside. The interior was a graveyard of forgotten technology, consoles flickering weakly like the last embers of a dying fire. Jax rummaged through the debris, searching for anything that might prove useful. His luck turned when he stumbled upon a control panel that still had power, its circuits barely clinging to life. Bingo, he muttered, tapping into the system with a mix of hope and desperation. Back on the shuttle, Helix's voice crackled in his ear. Find anything worth our time depends, Jax replied, fingers dancing over the dusty keys. Ever feel like playing puppet master? Can't say I have, Helix answered. But I'm all ears. I've got control of this ship's old defense system. Should give our friends something else to worry about. Perfect, Helix said. We'll hit them with a ghost fleet. Jax grinned, feeling the rush of adrenaline that always accompanied a plan just crazy enough to work. Here goes nothing. He activated the system, watching as the battleship's dormant turrets whirred to life. Across the scrapyard, several other ships began to stir, their ancient machinery groaning back into motion with all the enthusiasm of a hibernating bear disturbed mid-nap. Looks like you've stirred the pot, Zara chimed in, her excitement palpable even over the static. They're reacting to the new signals. It's chaos out there. Good chaos or bad chaos? Jax asked, already knowing the answer. The kind that keeps them off our trail, at least for now, Zara replied. I'm keeping an eye on their comms. They're scrambling to figure out what's happening. Then we've got a bit of a window, Jax said, making his way back to the shuttle. Let's use it. He returned to the cockpit, the familiar scent of smoke and burnt circuits a comfort amidst the madness. Helix guided the shuttle back into the fray, their path made a bit clearer by the confusion sown among their adversaries. Where to now, fearless leader? Helix asked, eyes darting between the chaotic landscape and the controls. Zara, any news on who's pulling the strings out there? Jax asked, leaning over her shoulder to peer at the screen. Nothing concrete yet, Zara said, her concentration unbroken. But I've narrowed down a few likely suspects. Seems like someone's trying to play warlord. Then it's time we crash their little empire before they decide to expand, Jax declared. Let's head for the outer edge of the scrapyard. If we're lucky, they'll be too busy dealing with our decoys to notice us slipping through. Luck's never been our strong suit, Helix pointed out, guiding the shuttle through another narrow escape. True, Jax conceded. But we've got something better, the element of surprise. The shuttle zipped through the scrapyard, the wreckage around them a testament to the universe's infinite capacity for destruction. Yet in that destruction lay opportunity, a chance to turn the tables on those who would see them as nothing more than pesky insects to be swatted aside. Any signs of pursuit? Jax asked, his gaze fixed on the view outside. Nothing yet, Zara reported, her fingers still working their magic. But they won't stay blind forever. Then we'd better make it count, Jax said, determination hardening his voice. The shuttle emerged from the scrapyard's clutches, the stars stretching out before them like a promise of freedom. But freedom was always a temporary illusion, especially in a galaxy where power was the only currency that mattered. Let's regroup and figure out our next move, Jax said. We need to stay one step ahead before they decide we're no longer worth the trouble. Agreed, Helix said, steering them toward a patch of space that offered at least a semblance of safety. This isn't over, not by a long shot, Zara nodded, her expression a mix of wariness and resolve. We've bought ourselves some time, but we're still in the thick of it. And that's just how I like it, Jax said, flicking ash from his cigar with a casual flick. Means we're still breathing, still fighting. As they sped away from the scrapyard, the chaos they'd left behind echoing in their wake, Jax couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. They'd given the sentient planets something to chew on, a distraction that might just buy them the edge they needed. Here's to unpredictability, Jax said, raising his cigar in a mock toast. To making it up as we go along, Zara added, a smirk tugging at her lips. And to not getting blown to bits, Helix finished, his grin as irreverent as ever. The universe was a harsh and unforgiving place, but as long as they had each other, and a few tricks up their sleeves, they'd keep pushing forward. Because in a galaxy teetering on the brink of war, survival was the ultimate act of rebellion. And if they had anything to say about it, they'd be rebels to the very end. The shuttle felt more like a coffin with seatbelts as the crew hurtled through the void. If the universe had an award for the most creatively suicidal escape plans, Jax figured they'd be shoo-ins for at least a nomination. Helix's piloting was a thing of beauty, if beauty were a high-speed crash course in not dying, and Zara's handiwork with the decoys was the only reason they weren't space dust already. But damn if that didn't make him feel more like a magician out of tricks than a captain with a plan. Helix, how's our fuel looking? Jax asked, hoping for news that didn't make him want to crawl into a bottle. We've got enough for Helix squinted at a flickering display, somewhere between a prayer and a wish. Great, Jax muttered. I'll start sending out invitations for the pity party. Zara leaned back, running a hand through her hair, eyes glued to her device. How's Plan C coming along? Assuming Plan C involves spontaneously learning to breathe in space, it's going fantastic, Jax said, puffing his cigar like it might grant him divine insight. We might need a Plan D, though. Plan D, die gloriously, Helix suggested, dry as a desert planet. More like die trying not to die, Jax corrected. Catchy, isn't it? Zara sighed, her expression the kind of frustrated only achievable after realizing the universe hates you. Sentient planets are moving. They're not buying the decoys for long. Typical, Jax grumbled. Can't they just appreciate good art when they see it? Apparently not, Zara replied, sarcasm coating her words like a bitter glaze. They're getting real focused on us. Like we're the universe's last slice of pizza. Guess that makes us the escalapeñosinus they didn't see coming, Helix chimed in. Spicy and unwelcome. Jax couldn't help but chuckle, though it came out more like a cough. All right, team. Let's find a way to turn this pizza into a full-course meal of chaos. The shuttle jolted, groaning under the strain of their mad dash through the scrapyard's outer limits. Jax imagined somewhere out there, a sentient planet was massaging its metaphorical temples, cursing them with whatever cosmic swears planets used. If only they could harness that kind of energy. Helix, any chance we can use the scrapyard to our advantage again? Jax asked, clutching onto a threadbare hope. Helix scanned the displays, his fingers a blur over the controls. If we can find another ship with a working defense system, maybe. But it's a long shot. Long shots are our specialty, Jax said, the words hollow in his mouth. Keep your eyes peeled. As they pushed forward, Jax felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him like a neutron star. The lives of his crew, the fragile hope that they could somehow pull through this, none of it felt manageable. He was just one man and the universe was a vast, uncaring monster. Hey, Jax, Zara said softly, breaking into his spiraling thoughts. We've been in worse spots, right? Yeah, Jax nodded, though he couldn't quite convince himself. Like that time we nearly got eaten by those sentient sandworms, or when we had to outsmart those zealots on Draxos, Helix added. I still can't believe you charmed our way out of that one, Jax. Yeah, well, I'm not as pretty as I used to be, Jax said, a ghost of a grin tugging at his lips. But thanks for the reminder. The nostalgia was a flimsy shield against the cold reality of their situation, but a shield nonetheless. It was easier to remember the victories than to face the looming sense of inevitable failure. The sentient planets were converging, and Jax needed a miracle as much as he needed a stiff drink. About time for a Hail Mary play, Jax announced, his voice louder than his confidence. Ideas could try redirecting power from the lower decks to boost our speed, Helix suggested. Might give us an edge if only for a minute, or we could try sending a false distress signal, Zara added. Confuse them for a little longer. Jax weighed the options like they were lead bricks, each with its own chance of crushing them. Let's do both. Helix, juice up the engines. Zara, start crafting that signal. Make it as convincing as a politician's promise. The crew set to work, their movements a well-rehearsed dance of desperation. Jax watched them, the pride in his chest warring with the anxiety clawing at his gut. Their strength was the only thing keeping him from crumbling under the pressure. Jax, engines are ready, Helix reported, his voice a lifeline in the storm. And the signal's good to go, Zara added, her eyes bright with determination. Sending it now. Jax took a deep breath, savoring the acrid tang of cigar smoke. Let's hope the universe is feeling generous. The shuttle surged forward, the engines roaring with borrowed strength. Jax felt the acceleration in his bones, a reminder that they were still alive, still fighting. But the true test was yet to come. As their ship raced toward an uncertain horizon, the universe held its breath, waiting for their next move. Jax, Helix said, breaking the tense silence. We've got incoming. Looks like they're catching on, of course they are, Jax muttered, his mind racing. Zara, any chance we can redirect their attention, already working on it, Zara replied, her fingers a blur over her device. But it's like trying to calm a herd of rabid space goats. Better than nothing, Jax said, clinging to whatever optimism he could muster. Helix, keep us moving. We need to stay unpredictable. The shuttle danced through the void, a tiny blip in the vast expanse of space. But even the smallest pebble could cause a landslide, and Jax intended to be the most disruptive pebble the universe had ever seen. Helix, you ever get tired of this? Jax asked, his tone light despite the tension. Tired? Nah, Helix replied with a smirk. Keeps the blood pumping. Besides, retirement plans are overrated. Jax chuckled, the sound brittle but genuine. Good to know. Zara, how's that misdirection coming? Could be worse, Zara said. They're buying the signal for now, but it won't last. Then let's make the most of it, Jax said, a determined edge to his voice. We didn't come this far just to get flattened by a bunch of sentient rocks. Their ship weaved and dodged, a testament to Helix's skill and the crew's refusal to go quietly. But as the sentient planets loomed closer, their collective consciousness bearing down on them like a tidal wave, Jax felt the crushing weight of the odds stacked against them. Helix, can we use any of this junk as cover? Jax asked, scanning the debris-strewn void for salvation. Not much left, but I'll see what I can do, Helix replied, his focus unwavering. Jax nodded, his mind a maelstrom of thoughts and fears. It was times like these that leadership felt less like a privilege and more like a burden, a relentless reminder of the lives resting on his shoulders. "Zara, any sign they're backing off?" Jax asked, the hope in his voice thin and strained. "Not yet," Zara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "But they are definitely confused." "Confusion's a start," Jax said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Let's keep it going." The shuttle pressed onward, a solitary vessel against the backdrop of a universe that seemed hellbent on their destruction. It was a grim reminder that even in the face of insurmountable odds, they refused to back down. They were survivors, rebels, and despite everything, they still had a few tricks left. "We're coming up on the edge of the scrapyard," Helix announced, his voice a beacon of hope. Jax felt a flicker of relief, tempered by the knowledge that their journey was far from over. But it was a small victory, a chance to regroup and find a new path forward. "Let's get some distance," Jax ordered, his resolve hardening. "We'll figure out our next move from there." The shuttle slipped through the scrapyard's outer reaches, the chaos they'd left behind a testament to their defiance. Jax let out a slow breath, the tension in his chest easing just enough to let him think clearly. "Zara, any sign of pursuit?" Jax asked, his gaze still fixed on the view outside. "Nothing on the scanners yet," Zara replied, a hint of relief in her voice. "But they won't stay blind forever. Then we'd better make this count," Jax said, determination a steady fire in his chest. As the shuttle sped away from the scrapyard, Jax couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. They'd bought themselves time, a precious commodity in a universe that seemed dedicated to their demise. But time was all they needed, time to regroup, to plan, to fight back. "Here's to us," Jax said, raising his cigar once more, a silent toast to resilience. "To staying alive," Zara added, the ghost of a smile on her lips. "And to whatever comes next," Helix finished, his grin irreverent as ever. The universe might be vast and uncaring, but as long as they had each other, they'd keep pushing forward. Because in a galaxy teetering on the brink of war, survival was the ultimate act of rebellion. And if Jax had anything to say about it, they'd be rebels to the very end. "The universe is a comedian, and I'm the punchline." Jax Vyerly, captain of what was optimistically described as a shuttle, sat in the cockpit and stared out at the swirling metal purgatory of the scrapyard. It felt like a cosmic joke, and he was starting to lose the ability to find it funny. The ship creaked around him, playing a symphony of groans and squeaks, the overture to their inevitable doom. He took another drag of his cigar. If the universe insisted on laughing at him, he'd damn well laugh back. As the engines hummed with the effort of their escape, Jax's mind wandered to a joke his father used to tell. It was ancient, something about a chicken and a road. Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. A joke so old it might have predated humanity's descent into the stars, but there was wisdom in its absurdity. Maybe it was the answer they needed. Something so illogical it would short-circuit the logical minds of the sentient planets. "Helix," Jax said, breaking the tense silence. "You ever heard of an old Earth joke about a chicken?" Helix raised an eyebrow, glancing over his shoulder. "I dunno, but sounds like it'd lay an egg." "Yeah. Well, it's not half bad," Jax replied, lips curling into a smirk. "What if we could hit those planet brains with something they can't wrap their logic around?" Zara, seated at the console next to Jax, glanced up from her handheld device. "You're suggesting we fight an armada of sentient planets with a chicken joke?" "It's not about the joke," Jax said, waving his cigar like a conductor's baton. "It's about scrambling their thought process. Throwing them something they can't compute." Helix chuckled, the sound dry and cracked like a ship's hull under pressure. "I like it. If they expect us to be predictable, let's disappoint him." Zara squinted, skepticism lining her face. "And how exactly do you plan to weaponize ancient humor, Captain Simple?" Jax replied, a gleam in his eye that bordered on madness. "We improvise." "Improvisation, your favorite strategy," Zara said with a sarcastic nod. "I'll start preparing the eulogy. Don't forget to mention my good looks," Jax shot back. "I've been working on those for years. Your face and the universe's sense of humor have a lot in common, Helix added. Both are cosmic mysteries. Jax shook his head, the banter doing wonders for his morale even if it was just a thin veneer over existential dread. He'd rather face doom laughing than whimpering. Let's focus. Helix, you keep us moving. Zara, start transmitting random patterns. Nonsense. Static. Make it loud. We want to be the noise in their perfect order. Zara glanced at her console, fingers already dancing across the surface. We've got some old Earth recordings stored up. A cacophony of chaos. I'll send everything from symphonies to screaming goats. Perfect, Jax said, stifling a laugh. Let's make them question if they've bitten off more than they can chew. Helix snorted. What if it works too well and they decide to spit us out? Then we'll be the first humans to be rejected by planets, Jax replied, feigning offense. And that's a badge I'd wear with honor. As Zara's fingers flew over her console, an orchestra of chaotic sound exploded into space. The universe might not have wanted to hear them, but it was going to anyway. Everything from Beethoven to the sound of cats screeching was now part of the cosmos soundtrack. If they survived, they'd owe the universe one hell of an apology. Signals out, Zara announced, her voice tinged with a mix of disbelief and amusement. If they've got any sense of humor, they might just find this funny. Here's hoping planets laugh, Jax muttered. Or at least pause long enough for us to skip town. Helix adjusted their trajectory, weaving through the field of debris with the finesse of a dancer. The ship shuddered as it broke through the scrapyard's final defensive perimeter, the mass of forgotten technology trailing in their wake. Jax felt a brief pang of nostalgia for the scrap they left behind, like leaving a party where you just started to get comfortable. All right, folks, Jax said, his voice steady as he leaned back in his seat. Let's see if our sentient friends have a sense of humor. The moment stretched on, seconds turning into an eternity as they waited for any sign of reaction from the planets. Jax chewed on his cigar, his mind racing with possibilities. He didn't like relying on a joke to save their skins, but at this point it was about as good a plan as any. Captain, Zara said, eyes fixed on her screen. I'm picking up some strange signals from the planet network. They're slowing down, slowing down. Helix echoed, his voice rising in disbelief. You mean it's working? Looks like it, Zara confirmed, her expression caught between shock and triumph. They're trying to figure out what the hell we're broadcasting. Jax let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Helix, take us further out. Put some light years between us and the Rolling Rock Comedy Club. Aye, Captain, Helix replied, his hands steady on the controls as he pushed the shuttle to its limits. The ship surged forward, leaving behind the mass of confused sentient planets. Jax imagined them trying to process the barrage of nonsense they'd been hit with, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Never thought I'd see the day when bad jokes saved the day, Zara said, shaking her head in disbelief. Who knew humor was the universe's kryptonite? Jax replied, grinning despite himself. Guess we're comedians now. Comedians of the cosmos, Helix added, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. I always knew I'd be famous. Just didn't think it'd be for this. Jax leaned back, the tension in his shoulders finally easing as they put more distance between themselves and the chaos behind. The universe was still vast and uncaring, but for the moment, they were alive. They defied the odds with nothing more than a punchline, and that was something worth celebrating. Let's not get too comfortable, Jax said, his tone more relaxed but still carrying a note of caution. We're not out of the woods yet, Zara nodded, her fingers still busy tapping commands into her console. I'll keep an eye on the scanners. If anything changes, we'll know. Good, Jax said, his gaze shifting to the stars ahead. Let's find someplace quiet to regroup. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. Helix adjusted their course, the ship gliding smoothly through the void. Any suggestions, Captain? Somewhere with less homicidal planets would be nice. How about that old space station we heard about? Jax suggested, recalling the rumors of a place long abandoned but still functional. Might be off the grid enough to buy us some time. Works for me, Zara replied. As long as it's got breathable air and something vaguely edible, I'm in, Helix chuckled, shaking his head. You've got simple tastes, Zara. I'm a simple woman, Zara replied, a smirk playing on her lips. I just want to not be pulverized by a sentient planet. Jack settled back, the tension in his chest easing as they cruised through the endless expanse. The universe was still a cruel mistress, but for now, they'd managed to outwit her. They had time, and in their line of work, time was the most precious commodity. Here's to us, Jack said, raising his cigar in a silent toast. The stupidest smart people in the galaxy. To surviving, Helix added, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. And to whatever crazy plan we cook up next, Zara finished, her eyes bright with determination. The universe might be vast and uncaring, but as long as they had each other, they'd keep pushing forward. They were the unexpected punchline in the universe's joke, and as far as Jax was concerned, that made them the luckiest bastards alive. Jax virally sat in the cockpit of his beleaguered shuttle, staring into the infinite void of space. Around him, the ship creaked like an old man's knees, an orchestra of mechanical complaints he'd long since tuned out. He took a final drag on his cigar, the smoke curling around him like a noose that the universe was only too happy to tighten. "All right," he muttered, flicking the cigar butt into a small, makeshift ashtray that was really just a repurposed cup holder. Time to see if a bad joke can do what weapons never could. Helix, his ever-reliable pilot, glanced over from the controls, his eyebrows raised in that perpetual look of skepticism. "You really think a chicken joke is gonna save our asses, Cap? Never underestimate the power of poultry," Jax replied, a dry smile sneaking across his face. "We've tried everything else. Might as well hit them where it hurts, their logic circuits." Zara, their tech genius and professional skeptic, was hunched over her console, fingers deftly dancing over buttons and screens. Her mouth twitched, caught between disbelief and resignation. "Broadcasting now. I've got everything from the chicken joke to a complete history of failed Earth sitcoms. If that doesn't confuse them, nothing will." Jax leaned back, feeling the weight of the universe bearing down on him. "Let's hope they are as sick of friends as I am." The ship shuddered as Zara sent the signal out into the cold, uncaring depths of space. Overhead, the ancient war machine, a sentient planet that had once been the pinnacle of a now-forgotten empire, loomed like a god with a hangover. It had been gearing up for a cosmic-level tantrum, but Jax was banking on its curiosity getting the better of it. "What's the worst that could happen?" Helix said, his voice laced with irony. "They could decide to fast-forward through our greatest hits. Keep your fingers crossed they don't have a skip ad button," Jax shot back, glancing at the planet through the cockpit's viewport. "Or that they don't decide to rearrange us atom by atom just for fun." Minutes dragged by like hours as they waited for a reaction. The tension was thick enough to cut with a laser, and Jax's mind wandered to thoughts of what he'd do if they actually pulled this off. Maybe retire somewhere quiet if quiet existed anymore. Hell, maybe he'd even take up farming. He could see it now, Jax Virely, galactic carrot connoisseur. Zara's console beeped, cutting through his reverie like a gunshot in a church. "I'm picking up activity. They are talking to each other. System errors are popping up across their networks." "Talking or gossiping?" Helix asked, a smirk on his lips. "Maybe they're debating which of us has the worst hair." "Definitely talking," Zara answered, eyes glued to her screen. "It's like they're trying to understand something beyond their programming." Jax leaned forward, his heart pounding like a faulty engine. "Okay, people, this is it. If they freeze up long enough, we might get out of this in one piece." The cosmic ballet unfolding outside was anything but graceful. The sentient planets, once moving with the precision of a finely tuned orchestra, now seemed to stumble over each other's cues. Signals blipped and blooped, communication lines tangling like an intergalactic game of telephone gone horribly awry. "They're calling a ceasefire," Zara said, disbelief heavy in her voice. "They're actually stopping. Guess they couldn't handle the punchline," Helix quipped, guiding the shuttle through the now-dormant battlefield. Or maybe they're just not into slapstick. Jax allowed himself a moment of triumph, a feeling so foreign he almost didn't recognize it. Looks like we've given them something to chew on. Now let's get the hell out of here before they decide to analyze us instead. Helix pushed the throttle forward, and the shuttle lurched into motion, leaving behind the chaos they'd inadvertently sown. Jax watched as the planets, once a looming threat, now seemed to hang in space like confused children who'd just been told Santa wasn't real. "Think they'll figure it out?" Zara asked, her face a mixture of relief and curiosity. "Probably," Jax conceded. "But by then, we'll be long gone and someone else's problem." They cruised through the debris field, the remnants of countless battles and forgotten ships serving as a grim reminder of what could have been. Jax knew their escape was temporary, a brief reprieve in the endless war that was life in this part of the galaxy. But for the moment, they had something resembling hope. "Where to now, Captain?" Helix asked, breaking the silence that had settled over them like a comforting blanket. "Somewhere out of range of curious planets," Jax replied. "I hear there's a nice black hole with a view around here. We can take a breather while the universe figures out its next move." Zara snorted, the sound a welcome reminder that they were still very much alive. A vacation at a black hole. "You really know how to treat a girl." Helix turned in his seat, a grin on his face. "Hey, it's not like we have a lot of options. Besides, think of the sights. You can't beat the light show." Jax chuckled, the sound surprising him with its genuine warmth. "And if things get dicey, we just fall in and call it a day." Zara tapped away at her console, plotting a course for their temporary haven. Course set. "Let's go hide for a bit and let the universe reset its sense of humor." As they slipped into the dark embrace of the cosmos, Jax felt the burdens of command lighten. For now, they were safe. The universe's dark comedy had granted them a reprieve, and they'd managed to improvise their way through another impossible situation. "Should we send a thank you note to the sentient planets?" Helix asked, glancing at his captain. Jax shook his head, a wry smile on his lips. "I'd rather not give them our forwarding address." The crew laughed, the sound echoing in the cramped confines of their shuttle. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They were alive, still kicking against the pricks of fate, and that was more than most could say in these parts. As the stars streaked by, Jax allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. Life out here was a series of close calls and narrow escapes, punctuated by moments of fleeting triumph and gallows humor. They were the jesters in the court of the universe, laughing in the face of existential dread, and that was how he liked it. "Here's to us," Jax said, raising an imaginary glass. "To the misfits, the dreamers, and the ones who keep finding a way to say no thanks to destiny." The others joined in the toast, their voices a chorus of defiance against the void. They were a crew of unlikely heroes, bound together by circumstance and stubbornness, and for now, that was enough. As they sailed toward the black hole, leaving behind the chaos they'd inadvertently caused, Jax couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but they'd found a way to survive, to laugh in the face of overwhelming odds. And as he settled back into his seat, he knew they'd keep doing just that, no matter what came their way. Because in a universe that refused to play fair, sometimes the best you could do was laugh and keep moving forward. And as long as they had each other, Jax was willing to bet they'd always find a way to do just that. Jax virally leaned back in his seat, feeling the weight of about 1,000 bad decisions lift from his shoulders as the shuttle glided through the scrapyard's twisted metal graveyard. The view was far from picturesque, more like industrial decay on a cosmic scale, but Jax had always had a soft spot for ugly things. Maybe it was the old romantic in him. "Well, that went better than expected," Helix sighed, his hands deftly dancing over the controls like a seasoned pianist who's more interested in the bar's tips than perfect performance. "Didn't even have to break out the emergency whiskey. Keep it on standby," Jax replied, squinting at the viewport as if expecting the universe to throw another curveball their way. The universe loves a good setup. You mean like us? Zara chimed in, her fingers tapping at her console with the same fervor as a cat on a keyboard. Because I'm pretty sure we are the punchline. Speak for yourself, Zara, Helix said, grinning. I'm still auditioning for the role of accidental hero. Hero or not, we're still in one piece, Jax said, eyeing the console. And that's more than I can say for whatever those sentient planets are going through right now. Maybe they're having an existential crisis over the chicken crossing the road, or debating if Ross and Rachel were on a break, Zara added with a smirk. Ah, the great mysteries of the universe, Helix drawled. Right up there with who let the dogs out and why are we here, Jax chuckled, the sound an awkward mixture of relief and disbelief. All I know is, we've given them something to think about. Maybe they'll spend the next century trying to decipher pop culture references instead of planning intergalactic domination. Here's hoping they binge-watch themselves into oblivion, Helix said, steering the shuttle away from a particularly ominous-looking chunk of debris. Think we could get them hooked on reality TV next? Let's not be cruel, Zara replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Even sentient war machines deserve better. As the shuttle moved toward the black hole, nature's version of a do not disturb sign, Jax allowed himself a moment of introspection. The universe was a chaotic mess, and yet here they were, a ragtag crew making it through one improbable situation after another. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was sheer stupidity. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the unpredictability of human nature that kept them alive. You ever think about how we're kind of like the cockroaches of the cosmos? He mused aloud. Speak for yourself, Zara shot back, not looking up from her console. I prefer to think of us as more like the raccoons, resourceful scavengers with a knack for mischief. Why can't we be more like cats? Helix offered. Sleep all day, get fed on demand, and occasionally knock things off shelves for fun. Because we lack the grace, Jax deadpanned, and the ability to land on our feet, Zara laughed, a rare sound that was surprisingly infectious. That's true. We do tend to make a mess of even the best-laid plans. More like we make plans just to watch them fall apart, Helix added, easing the shuttle into a comfortable cruising speed. It's practically our brand at this point. Jax nodded, a wry smile tugging at his lips. And yet, here we are still kicking. Must be doing something right. Or very, very wrong, Zara said, finally tearing her gaze away from her screen. But hey, who's keeping score? Not me, Helix replied, leaning back in his chair. I gave up on keeping score around the time we accidentally started a galactic war with bad comedy. I never thought I'd say this, but thank God for sitcoms, Jax remarked, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with the universe. Who knew they'd be our secret weapon? Just goes to show, Zara said, shutting down her console for the moment. Never underestimate the power of humor. Or abject stupidity. Both seem to be our specialties, Helix agreed, glancing at the captain. So what's next, Jax? Got any more terrible ideas up your sleeve? Jax hesitated, the weight of command settling back on his shoulders like an old, familiar coat. For now, we find a quiet corner of the galaxy to catch our breath. Let the universe have its tantrum without us in the crossfire. And after that, Zara asked, an eyebrow raised. After that, who knows? Jax replied, a hint of mischief in his voice. Maybe we'll find ourselves another ancient weapon to confuse with puns. Or we could open a space comedy club, Helix suggested. Show the universe we're a triple threat, funny, unpredictable, and really hard to kill. Jax chuckled again, the sound a bomb against the ever-present tension. We might just be onto something, Helix. After all, in a universe full of logic-driven machines and cold, calculating entities, unpredictability might just be our greatest strength. They continued their journey toward the black hole, a temporary refuge in a universe that seemed to thrive on chaos and confusion. The stars blurred past them, a reminder of the vastness of space and the small, stubborn life forms navigating it. "Here's to us," Jack said, raising an imaginary glass once more. "To the screw-ups, the survivors, and the lunatics who refuse to play by the rules." The crew joined in the toast, their spirits lifted by the shared absurdity of their existence. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They were alive, still challenging fate with a grin and a middle finger, and that was more than enough for now. As they sailed into the dark unknown, leaving behind the chaos they'd inadvertently caused, Jax couldn't help but feel a strange sense of optimism. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but that unpredictability was what made being human so unique. They were a cosmic anomaly, a glitch in the system, and as long as they had each other, they'd find a way to keep going. "Think we'll ever find a place to settle down?" Helix asked, his voice casual but curious. Jax shrugged, his eyes on the stars. "Maybe. But until then, there's a whole universe out there full of things waiting to be broken, misunderstood, or laughed at. And I'd like to think we're just the crew for the job." With that, they flew onward, a small ship in a big, uncaring universe, guided by the unpredictable nature of their own humanity. And as long as they had a bad joke or a crazy plan up their sleeve, Jax knew they'd always find a way to survive. After all, if they could outwit sentient planets with sitcoms, there wasn't much they couldn't handle. In the end, they were just a bunch of misfit humans, refusing to go quietly into the void. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to make them the luckiest bastards alive.